Okay, so the very first one, the notes that we're looking at is the one that has a 5 at the bottom, because that is the first one. So the page 5 is what we're looking at. Okay. You should have a 5 and a 6. Yes. Yeah, so make sure you got 2 separate pages as well, and then get a repeat if they got mixed up, because they do look similar. So yesterday we talked about some vocabulary and some key features, is what they're called, of a quadratic graph. So what shape, what do we call the shape of a quadratic graph? It is U-shaped, but there's a specific vocabulary word that you need to know what it is.
What does it say? Say it again. A parabola.
A parabola. The word that's talking about the shape, okay, is parabola. So in your Get More Math, when you are asked to graph a quadratic equation, you have to change the drop-down menu from line to parabola. Okay, it will not graph the correct shape for you if you don't change it at the top of the Get More Math to say parabola. If parabola is not an option, okay, then you would select curve. Okay, so on Get More Math, I believe that it has parabola on the ones I've seen. When that you do ALEX and we do that growth measure again, that knowledge check that we do in the ALEX program on the Halton Mifflin or McGraw-Hill or whatever it is book, the online book, I don't think that it has the parabola option. It has the curve option. So this is why I need you to know both things. Okay. And in that one, you have to graph 5 points. So you need to know how to get 5 points to graph it if you're using the curve. On Get More Math, it's actually pretty easy to graph as long as you know what you have to do. So you do need to, you might want to make you a note and Get More Math that you do need to change it to parabola, because that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so in Get More Math, when you have asked to graph, you have to tell it that you want it to graph a parabola, not a line. And then in Get More Math, to get it to graph for you, you have to tell it first, you have to plot the vertex first. Okay. And then one other point. It doesn't matter which other point that you plot, but you have to then plot one other point and it will do the correct graph for you. Oops. I don't know what I did. I closed it down on my side. It's kept it up there. I don't know what happened. There it is. Okay. I don't know what I hit. Anyway. So once you do that, okay, in Get More Math, it will graph the curve because it'll know that this is where the axis of symmetry is going to be, and it's a mirror image on both sides when you tell it to do a parabola. Okay. Now, if you plot this point first and then try to plot the vertex, it will give you a parabola like this, and that would not be the correct one, right? So don't tell it to check it when it is not looking right. Okay, so make sure that you do the vertex point first and then do one other point and it will graph it correctly for you. Okay. Now, on the calculator that you have in front of you, we're going to graph this function that we're given here in our example. So to do that, Okay. So a couple of things. If that the people before you did not clear the calculator, okay, then when you get to the graph and it's got something on it, click on the line that's actually graphed or the function that's graphed, and then, hit delete. And that will erase everything that's on the screen for you. Okay? In order to get to the graph, okay, well, hang on, let me make sure everybody can get to the graph if they forgot. So to get to the graph, you can hit the B button, or you can hit this little key down here. The flying calculator will open it up. If it's on the calculator page, then hit the flying calculator again, and it will flip between these two tabs. Okay. If you have a graph on there and you're wanting to erase it, okay, use the little mouse right here to scroll over and click on the line that's drawn, and then hit the delete button. And it should erase everything. Did that work? Okay. So now, if you don't have a little box pop up so that you can type something in, okay, either double click with your little mouse thing there again in the blank space, okay, double click in the blank space and it will pop up, or you can hit the tab button. The tab button also opens up that thing. Okay, so if you have a table, again, that's because the last person didn't clear it out before they put it up. Okay, go to Control T, that gets rid of the table. Okay, Control T puts it back up there as well. The other way that you can clear your calculator from the very get-go when you very first pick it up, and this should probably be what you do, that's why I leave that instructions up there, to clear your calculator as soon as you get it so that you don't have to worry about all the other mess that people leave on there. Okay? Or before you put it up, you can do that. Either way. So on this calculator, don't erase the F1 of X. We leave that on this calculator. That's the programming. That's the only way that the STAR test lets you graph with this calculator. Okay, so you have to leave the function notation up there. So instead of the y equals, you're not going to include the y equals. You're just going to type the rest of the equation after the equal sign. So x squared plus 4x, oh, no, minus 4x plus 1, right? Okay. So once you type all that in, you can hit enter, and it should graph it like this. Mine's not centered because I was showing them how to move things around. So if your equation ends up in the way, okay, so does everybody have a graph on their screen so far?
Sometimes it's not.
Okay. Does it look like this one?
Yes.
Okay. So, did you get it, Malia?
This calculator is being recorded. -4.
Okay, make sure you're using minus and not negative. Are you using minus?
Yeah, I kept putting the minus, and then it wanted to multiply that x squared with -4.
That's because you were using the negative sign instead of minus. Okay, so you got it fixed now? Okay. So now if this equation is in the way, okay, use your little mouse thing here. Okay, and when you get over the equation, it'll have a little hand. You see the hand that pops up there? If you hold down and click on that mouse, it will grasp it and will let you move it around. Okay, so I can move it out of the way so it's not in my way over to this side, and then let it go, and it should stay there, or click it again after it moves, I think, and it should stay there. You can do the same thing with your graph, so make sure that if you click and grab something, it's actually what you want to move, because if you click and grab this blank space, it would move your whole graph like this. That's why mine was off-centered a while ago, because I was moving it around to show the other class. Okay. But the same thing happens if you click on the line and start moving it, then you won't have the right line either. Okay, so make sure you only click and grab and move things that you actually want to click and grab and move. Does that make sense? Now, how did I tell you to get the table up there? Control T. I heard somebody say it. Right? Control T. Now, does this table look the same as the table on your example? Does it have the same information?
Wait, no.
What's different about this one than the one on your example?
The X and Y.
Wait, how does he get that? No, the X is like over there.
Okay, so I do have my X column right here, but where does my first X start at? 1. Where does my first X start at on my example? -1. So if I want to see X negative, where X is -1, notice that it's counting up as I go down, right? So if I want my X values to go negative, I need to scroll up. And to do that, I just need to hit the up arrow over here. Okay, so make sure it's clicked on. If it's not clicked on, then click on the table over here, and then you can scroll up and scroll down to find whatever table values that you need. Okay, it goes on forever. So if you need to have something okay, so I mean, it goes forever. So we don't usually need that big of numbers, but they're there. You would just have to find them. Okay. So now do I have the same numbers? I've got X is -1. When X is -1, my Y is 6. Is that right? Okay. 0 and 1. 1 and 2. -2. Okay, good. And then 2 and -3. Okay, so these are all points that you could plot to graph this graph if you're needing to graph it on your own. So graph it on the calculator, do Control T to get the points that you need, and then use it to graph. Okay, now do Control T, and let's get rid of that table really quick because we don't need it for what I'm going to show you next. So Control T. Okay. Now yesterday we talked about the zeros. Can you tell by looking at this or even looking at the table what the zeros are? What are my zeros? Do you guys remember? What am I looking for? So when I'm asking you for the zeros, what am I asking you for? What am I asking you to look for?
Like the zeros in the graph?
Yep, the zeros are the x-intercept, right? So the x-intercept is what I'm looking for. And if you look at my line here, my x-intercept is not at a nice even grid point, is it? It's a little bit before 4 right here, and it's a little bit after 0 right there. So I'm going to show you how to get that answer. So go to menu. Okay. If you still have your table up there, it'll still do it for you. You just have to make sure you've clicked on the graph to do it. So do menu. And we're going to go to Analyze Graph. Remember, we used this when we did systems of equations and you graphed it. And which choice did we use there when we needed to figure out the solution for system of equations? What did we look for? We looked where they intersected, right? Because the intersection was the coordinate that worked for both lines. Okay. So do you see vocabulary that we talked about yesterday on here?
Yeah.
What are they?
Minimum, maximum.
Minimum, maximum. What about the very top one? The 0. Okay. So we won't ever use those last 4 problems. Those are pre-cal things. So you'll only use the first 4. Okay. Right now we're looking to find what the 0 is. Okay. So click on 0. Okay. This little dotted line here, we used that when we did the intersection before, but it's a highlighter tool. Okay. So you're going to click somewhere, not on your graph necessarily, just somewhere on one side of it. Click. That's going to start the highlighter process. Drag it over towards your graph, and then the 0 is going to pop up there. Okay. When you click it again to get rid of the highlighter, it will leave that point there, and I can move it over to the side because I don't want it where I can't read it. Okay.
Mine says 0 anywhere. Mine says 0 like anywhere I move it.
Okay, so let me do this. I'll walk you through it again. Okay, so menu, analyze graph, 0. Click over on one side, right, and drag it to the other side.
I did that, but like, where do I stop the?
You don't. You just stop it.
As soon as this 0 pops up right there, that word 0 on your screen pops up, it means it's found it, and you can click again, and it will keep it there. Okay. So that only gives us a 1 0, right? Okay. Okay, so you've got to start it. You got to start it highlighting and then drag it over. Okay, so it has to shade and highlight so that that tells it which area to look for. Okay. Okay. Did everybody else get it to work on theirs? Okay. Maylee, did you get it to work? Kirsten? Okay. Mary?
Yes.
Okay. Sienna? Kaden answered. Maylee? Or Malaya? And Rodrigo? Got to work? Okay. So, so that only gave us one of them. So do analyze graph again, and we've got to do the same thing for this other 0 on the other side. Since we have 2 of them. If we only had 1 of them, we'd only need to do it once.
Yeah, I did that one on accident first.
That's fine. And you can actually, if you don't want the points to stay there, you can scroll over and highlight it, and you can see how it's there, real light gray. And if I keep going, it'll find the other one eventually too. And so you don't have to click them to keep them there. But to me, I like it to actually be on the screen instead of me having to keep trying to get them to pop up. Does that make sense? So now I can click, so that one stays there as well. And now I have my 2 answers for my 2 zeros. And if I go menu again and analyze graph, so you need to know where this is because this is very helpful during the STAR test specifically because I don't know how to get Desmos to do some of these things. Okay. And the calculator will do and makes a lot of things easier for you. And Desmos is easier in some ways too, so that's why we let you use both of them on the STAR test, right? The more things you have to help you, the better. Okay. So is this function or this graph, this parabola, does it have a minimum or a maximum?
Like a minimum.
It has a minimum. Okay, because it has a lowest point, and that's what minimum means, right? Your lowest point. If you choose maximum, it would pick way up here at the very top of the graph, which is not what you're looking for, right? So do minimum, and it's got this highlighter thing again, because that's the only way it knows to do it, is for you to pick an area that you want it to look in for the answer. Okay, so there's the coordinate that it gave me for that. Okay, so I can move these around so that, labels them however.
Okay. Wait, how'd you get that?
So menu.
No, I mean, I got the highlighting thing. I'm just like, where do you stop it?
Well, after it pops up that, so it'll pop up that little thing that says minimum, and then just click, just like you did for the 0. Once that pops up, it's found it, and then you can click and it will have it there. I've got 2 of them now. But anyway. Won't let you grab it and move it. What you may do is grab your graph, like grab a blank space on your graph and move it. And that might make it easier to grab and move that way. Did that do it?
Okay.
Did it close your hand and grab it?
It won't. Like, it won't even pop up.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So hold it down until it closes.
I did that and it just like, it went away. It pop up a tab, like text, and then it pop up tab.
Okay, I don't know. I know that. So like, when it's over the text like that, then hold it down until it closes, and then let it go, and then drag it, and then click it again until it drops.
Thank you.
Okay. So now that you know how to do all of that stuff, I want you to do that for the examples down at the bottom. I want you to use those, everything that we just did.
So wait,
So that's letting me. Okay.
I got a question. Like,
Mhm.
since with all these little numbers on here, what's the answer? Is it the maximum thing? 2-3?
That's your coordinate. Yes, that's your that tells you your vertex.
Mhm.
So when it's asking you for the minimum or maximum on the paper, it's only wanting the y value for that, right?
Yeah.
But that gives you the vertex. So
Okay.
it's the minimum point.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So yes. So now on this paper, okay, on our examples that we're doing here, okay, I want you to make a table. Okay, you need 5 points. Okay, so once you get it to graph, okay, in this place right here, put the vertex in the middle so that you can find 2 numbers on one side and 2 numbers on the other side of it. If you always put the vertex in the middle, that will help you to get those 5 numbers around it. Okay. So do number 1, and then do number 2 if that you get ahead of everybody else.
How do I clear it again?
Okay, to clear it, just tap on the graph that you graphed, the actual line, and then hit the delete button. And it should erase everything for you. Did that do it? Okay. And then to get it to pop up to graph something again, either hit tab or double click in a blank space. So did you do Control T on your graph?
Yeah, I have it up and everything, but like how how the T chart over here it says -1 and 6, and you need to find that, but how do you do it on 1? Because there's not that T chart.
So did you draw this? Draw this on your paper like it is up there, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So yeah, you make your own table like that.
But is there a certain number?
So it's 0.
So well, what's the vertex? So for this one, when you graph it, right, your vertex ends up right there.
How do you know which one's your vertex from the table?
If you're just looking at the table, you have to look for, so let me pull it back up here. Okay. Okay, so let me graph this. No, this is the last one. Remember, I haven't cleared mine. Okay. So,
calculator's
go ahead. x squared plus 2. Okay, so it looks like this, and then you do Control and T. Okay, and you get this. So to figure out where the vertex is, you can look here, but you have to look at the pattern. Okay, so you have to see, okay, it counts down, right? And then it gets to 2, and it starts reflecting the same numbers again.
Ours says the same thing right here, but ours doesn't show the same thing on the table.
Have you scrolled up and down some already?
Yeah, but I'm on 0 and 1, 2, like you are. And mine still says 2. But it says the same thing at the top.
No, it says the same thing. So 0, 2, negative 1, 3, 1,
But look, why does yours just say 11?
Because I had scrolled way up because I was showing you have to see the pattern.
Okay, so since this is right here and that's 2, does that mean you start at 2? That's the vertex?
No, actually. So look. So x is not 2 because when x is 2, we're here. X is actually 0 right there. So.
Oh, yeah, because that's y.
So the vertex is right here. So you have to look for where it starts going, like, so as you go, then you get to 2 and it starts repeating. So the vertex is right here where you see that repeat where it flips.
Yeah.
So that's.
And from here, do we go down or we go up?
Both. You need 2 numbers up and 2 numbers below.
How do we know which one's the vertex? So how do we know which one's the middle?
I'll tell you one minute. So you Control T again. Okay. So to figure out what the vertex is, if you don't know what that coordinate is, right? Then you would. So you can see, oh, those are all equal enough. So I'm gonna look the other direction. Oh, look, I start seeing the same numbers again. So this is where it flips over and starts. So that vertex, remember, is where it changes direction.
So the vertex would be 0.
0, 2, right? And then you would do 2 numbers on one side and 2 numbers on the other side. So here, so you're looking for the pattern. So you're looking for where it starts. So you've got the vertex that's right here because then it repeats and starts seeing the same thing. So you would use this number and then 2 numbers on this side and 2 numbers on the other side.
My graph isn't popping up to 0.
Well, why? Why is there no 0? Because what is the 0?
2.
No. The 0 is your x-intercepts. Does your graph actually cross the x-axis?
Oh, no.
No. So would there be zeros on this graph? No. There is no zeros on this graph. So this would be a no solution. This would be a graph that has no solution on it because there's no x-intercepts. Okay? So we looked, and so I was showing them that your vertex is at 0, 2, because when you're going on your table, you see if you're just looking at the table trying to figure out what the vertex is, then you're going to have to scroll up and down until you start seeing this mirror image thing happening, where you start seeing those repeat numbers. Okay? So I know my vertex is 0, 2, and then I use -1 and -2, and +1 and +2 for the other side. So I've got my vertex, -1 and 3, okay, and -2 and 6, which I graphed that at the wrong point, and 6 right here. Okay, because I know that that is the axis of symmetry, okay, then I should know that this is since that's my vertex, that's where it flips over, right? That line. So this point is 1 block from the axis of symmetry. Okay, so it's also 1 block over here. So I should have a mirror image of my dot. Since this one is 2 blocks, then I should have 2 blocks over here to my other point on this side. Okay, so if you are given half of a graph, because I've seen that on the STAR test before, where it gives you this, it doesn't give you the equation, it gives you half of the graph, and it wants you to determine what a point is over here on this other side, and you need to know, well, it reflects exactly from the axis of symmetry. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you're not given the equation and you're only given half of the points, then you need to know the property of the fact the axis of symmetry flips the other side over to mirror it exactly. So you should see that same fact here because it's mirrored on both sides of the vertex, right? So now, okay, do this other one and do the same thing, okay? Find the vertex to go in this middle spot here.
So this one would be a maximum?
This one would be a maximum, yes. So that's the other thing. You could use the analyze graph and get it to tell you what coordinate so you know where you're starting at on your table, right, for your vertex. So you should end up with something like this when you're done with that one. I'm going to try to rush us through this last example, and then I just need to talk about the other side a little bit. But so this, or the other page, sorry, a little bit. This one right here, okay, looks like this. Like Jolene said, there's a maximum in this one, right, because it goes down. On this one, it was a minimum. Okay, and we talked about this yesterday. The domain is always all real numbers, right? So when you're given the equation, the domain is all real numbers. The range, however, we need to talk about real quick. Okay, so my range, okay, right here, that's my lowest y value. All my other y values go up from that point. So my range is y is greater than or equal to 2. I'm always using the y from the vertex. Okay, so that number came from the vertex.
What?
My 2 came from my vertex, came from that minimum point that's there. For my range on the other side, it's a maximum point, right? If that's my biggest number that it's ever going to get, then that means all my y's here are less than or equal to -4. Again, that -4 was that y from my vertex. That's where I got that number from. So in this next one, okay, like I said, we're running out of time, so I want to talk about this one really quick. If you graph this one, you get a vertex that falls right here, not really on the line. Okay. 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 It's not really on the line anywhere. It's right below. So when you graph it, you end up with a line that goes just below your x-axis. Okay. And it does not give you a coordinate in your table for that vertex point because it's not on a whole number. So you need to figure out what it is by using the analyze graph, okay, like we were doing. Okay, so I'm going to try to quickly graph it here. And delete. So it is what, x squared minus 3x. Oops. I left that in the, so don't do that either. Minus 3x, leave it in your exponent, plus 2. Okay, so notice that it's right below the thing there. So you've got to go to menu, analyze graph to get that point, which is a minimum, so that you can put that vertex on your table. So now I know what my vertex is. Okay. It is 1.5 and negative 0.25. And then 1 and 2 are both at 0. Those are my zeros. And then at 2 and 0, I believe is it 2 or is it 4? I didn't do, what's the numbers here? Oh, I can't look at mine because it's hiding behind my thing here. Anyway, so whatever those numbers were, I thought they were 2. They might be 4, but I think they're 2. It is 2. Okay, so, and my range for this would be y is greater than or equal to with the big side because it's greater than first, greater than or equal to negative 0.25. So really quickly, okay, I will go back to that in just a second. Let me just check this box really quick, okay, guys? Okay, I need to tell you that there is a way to do this without graphing it to know this information. Okay, it's using these formulas here. Okay, our ax squared plus bx plus c is our standard equation for a quadratic, right? That's where this b and a comes from in my formula. Okay, so if you want to find out what the axis of symmetry is without graphing it, this is the formula that you would use for it. And then once you have that x value, okay, once you have that x value, then you would use that and substitute it back into your original equation, and that will give you what your vertex is. Okay, that gives you your y value, which is your minimum or maximum, and you already have your x from your axis of symmetry, so that's how you get your vertex mathematically without having to graph it. Because our graphing calculators do all that for us, you don't use this all the time, but here it is so that you do know it. One other thing, hang on, let me tell you one other thing about this handout. Hey, this is just, you can color it, whatever, but one thing you do need to memorize on here, because this does come up sometimes, okay, is that if the a in front of the x squared is positive, it's always going to be an upward parabola. If the a is negative, it's always going to be a downward parabola. That's how that you can tell if it's going to be up or down. Okay? So. Did you need me to go back to that other stuff, Kaden? Did you need that last? You got it? Okay.
I have a question now, so.
Uh-huh.